family. Welcome to another episode of the Stay Juicy podcast. I am your host, Dr. Ariana, and in today's episode, I am just talking. I'm talking about women. I'm talking about being on the struggle bus. I'm talking about life that be lifing sometimes. So in this podcast, I go through a couple of different scenarios that I had, little encounters that I had with patients this week. On Fridays is my aesthetic days, and there's a magical thing that happens when a woman sits in a chair, especially if there's another woman that's helping to uplift her. So I get so much joy when women come in and I'm able to touch their lives in a different way. When they come in really thinking that they need something superficially on the outside, but by the time they leave, they realize that they really just needed to get their soul fed. And so this episode is about feeding that soul, whether it's during the holidays, during any stressful time period. What are some of the things that we can do to just manage life when it's lifing? So I hope you enjoy this episode of Stay Juicy Podcast. So this week, I saw quite a few patients that I would say that they were truly on the struggle bus. I was right there with them, but as a doctor, I have the opportunity to step outside of my problems and get to work. And my work is to help other people heal. And that healing isn't just physical. Obviously, it's not just balancing hormones, but it's also listening to women and hearing them and being a safe space. One of the things that is great about Fridays for me is it's my aesthetic day. So on Fridays, I don't do anything what I would call strenuously medical. Women come in, sometimes some men too, but they come in and they want their Botox or they want some filler or they want to get ready for a reunion or a party or the holidays. And one patient came in this week. Actually, I had several came in all on Friday, and I think it was a gift to me because I was definitely struggling with some things and trying to get out of my head. And I think the gift of being able to help other people is a great gift to help you get out of your own head and your space, and to also remember your blessings and be grateful for the things that are going right in your life. But this week, I had several patients, and I'm going to kind of go through the different issues because I know that these issues aren't unique to those particular clients. And these are really kind of universal issues that lots of us are dealing with. The first person was almost 40-year-old woman who has 4 children. I think they're all under 7 years old. So just that right there is, that's a lot. I just get tired talking to her about her day and all the things. And it made me reflect back to what it felt like just having 2 kids. They were just 15 months apart, but gosh, it was a lot. Just the constant preparing and planning and trying to be emotionally, mentally, and physically available for younger children, despite your own issues, despite your lack of sleep or motivation or just ability to cope in general, despite all of it, needing to have to show up. And, that's a lot of work. And I, first of all, wanted and did say, you're working really hard. She kind of made some mention about women who were kind of working outside of the home. And I'm like, girl, you got 4 kids in your house under 7. You should work outside the home so you can get a break. Working outside of the home is oftentimes easier, in my opinion. I've had both worlds briefly, being at home with a little one, and I just remember thinking, wow, I'm never going to ask another patient, does she work? I'm going to be very specific. Do you work inside the home or outside the home? Because girl, you got kids, you work. But anyway, she was just feeling I don't know. She wanted to pick me up for the holidays, and she comes in fairly often, but this particular time I said, you know what, look at yourself, look in the mirror and tell me like what's not right. Like take the time to just stop and see your beauty. Like we go and constantly feel this need to improve something, but how about just stopping and saying, hey, I look good. I'm okay. Like I did good with this. How about taking some time for yourself and really thinking about and maybe even rewarding yourself for how far you've come, for what you have accomplished, and for all the things that you have managed up until this time. And yes, there are a lot of things that feel unmanageable right now. And I will be speaking, I'll be speaking about the patients, but I'm also speaking about myself. So don't get it twisted. Don't let the Instagram feed fool you, folks. Life is lifing. And yes, there are some absolutely amazing, wonderful opportunities that are happening for me, but there are also some very fantastic issues and things that I still have to deal with. And I remember actually just listening to Tabitha Brown and at an interview, and she said something to the effect that as people get to be more of a celebrity, people lose that humanity. People don't see them like with them in the struggle. And I'm here to tell you that I'm not anywhere near Tabitha Brown celebrity, but just based on what I'm doing and the comments I get, I know people have this false sense that everything is great. And yeah, on some level, some things are great, but on other levels, they are not great. And, we got to take the good with the bad, but just take that time to honor yourself. And so my advice to her was, yeah, we can do a little touch up here or there, but at the end of the day, you don't need anything. And in terms of aesthetics, for me, I also feel like just being able sometimes get a little better reflection of ourselves in the mirror sometimes helps to spark what we really need to be digging a little deeper towards, which is seeing our inner beauty and seeing our resilience and seeing our worth, because that is so much more than not having wrinkles on your face or trying to avoid the sags and the bulges, because they're happening. It's all happening. We're just going at different paces and looking a little differently, but we're all losing, we're all losing muscle, bone, and all the things. And so we can't necessarily stop those, but we can begin to see our spirit, our inner beauty, and really see that part of us before anything else. And so that's what I hope to inspire her with. And at the end of the visit, she was more inspired. We did way less than what she came in to do. And it wasn't necessarily great for business, but it was great for my spirit to uplift her and help her see her beauty and be okay with where she was right there at that moment, period. Nothing else. So the next patient, and again, all of these different women that came in, they kind of mirrored me in some way, because in some way I could identify with every part of their struggle, whether it was a past struggle I'd had or a current struggle, I could identify with it. But another woman came in, and again, I find that, and you guys know this, you go to your hairdresser maybe, or your lash person. Mine is my lash girl. She's like my therapist, but it's something about sitting in that chair, something about being able to unload and feel heard and feel safe and just really be real about how you are feeling at that moment. And there's something about that chair, the hair chair, the aesthetic chair, whatever chair. And hopefully you have someone that you can confide in that way, that you can just kind of download and feel the opportunity to share. Because I think that's a form of therapy for us. And that is why I call my lash girl my therapist. Anywho's, the next lady, I would say, she was really on the struggle bus. And she actually was the one who inspired me to talk about this week, because she had recently gone through a divorce. She has a teenage daughter at home, and she was laid off from her job. She had been in that industry for over 2 decades, and she was depressed, and I could see that, right? And so she came in wanting all of the things, and I could pretty much immediately see through all of that. And it's like, once again, we can do all of the things, but what's really going on with you? Because, putting a little filler in your face or all the things that we do that's just a Band-Aid, and it's really not a great solution. And in fact, it's not a solution at all. In her case, it's clear she's 48 years old. She was a poster child of perimenopause. And what was gratifying for this encounter was that she actually never considered she was going through perimenopause. And she's been battling depression. She's been feeling irritable. She's been feeling overwhelmed, and just really trying to find a sense of anything normal in her life. She left her job in banking and finance and actually went to be a 4th grade teacher. And she was like, I'm having so much joy making a difference in these little kids' lives. And it was a different type of transition. But again, the types of transitions that I see women making as life starts to scream that something has to change, some of us are willing to make those changes despite understanding or knowing what's going to be on the other side of them. Because, society has kind of defined how we're supposed to show up and how long we're supposed to do it and what we're supposed to be doing. But at some point, we just realized that that was the Kool-Aid. We drank a lot of Kool-Aid. And now, as I like to say, we are looking around and starting to realize what we really came here to do. And if you can just stop and honor that, what you really came here to do, I'd say you're on the right track, even if you don't understand where it's taking you. But in this particular woman's case, we started talking about her hormones. And even though she was getting minimal hot flashes, she was having lots of difficulty with sleep. She's having more anxiety than she's ever had. And the depression was really, I could see it because I hadn't seen her in months, and I could just tell that she was definitely off. And to that extent, she was kind of just basically white knuckling it. And I was like, girl, like, there's no need. You do not need to white knuckle any of this, right? Get some help. So what does that look like? If you're a woman of a certain age and you're starting to notice that you're just having a hard time managing things, coping, you're irritable, you're just feeling like, I don't know about this life thing. Sometimes the struggle is quite real. And if you're feeling that way and feeling like there's a lot of shifting going on in the background, stop and listen to that. Stop and listen to the shift. Stop and listen to what I would call spirit that's talking to you. Listen and hear, and maybe even write down, because this is the time of life, I believe, that we have to be intentional about the work. Because this is a transitional period that, honestly, if you're not aware that you're going through this, and I use the names perimenopause and menopause, but it really is this period, I'm going to say, somewhere between 35-ish and 60. Like, and that's a big range, isn't it? That's 25 years, but let me tell you, there's a lot of shifting going on. And maybe for some of you, it's not starting, maybe it's closer to 45. But at the end of the day, just trust and believe that there's some shifting going on. And you got to be intentional about this work. Otherwise, it really is the tail wagging the dog. And what I mean by that is that hormones during this period are fluctuating just like they were in puberty. Think about that. Puberty was crazy, right? There were days when you just were losing it and it seemed like the world was ending and everything was just a catastrophe. It was all the things. And this is it again. You're literally kind of going through what I guess some of us would call a reverse puberty. And know that you're not alone, but this time you got to do the work. You don't have the luxury of laying in the bed and just like checking out, right? There's bills to pay, there's things you got to do, there's responsibilities. And so we don't get to check out. But what are we going to do in the meantime while, the tail is trying to wag the dog? So in this season, I think it's really important to journal. Journaling really helps to get us to transcribe what some of these thoughts are and really have the opportunity to look back on them and then be able to reflect or analyze. And that's a part of the work, which is first and foremost just the awareness of knowing what you're feeling and what's actually happening. So writing those things down is huge. In her case, I recommended, number one, she's got to get some medical help. Her depression needs to be treated, and that treatment could be through therapy. I think in her case, she would probably benefit from medication, but also her hormones are really a significant culprit. So we want to make sure that we are balancing things out. She didn't have a uterus, so it would seem that she didn't need progesterone, because progesterone is that hormone that helps to balance out the estrogen. But I would argue that progesterone does a lot of other things outside of just protecting our uterus. Progesterone actually increases GABA in the brain, and that GABA helps for relaxation, and it helps us sometimes with sleep. And so, especially in the early perimenopausal period, progesterone oftentimes is a hormone that's lacking. And when I say progesterone, I do mean natural progesterone, not the progestogens that you see in your birth control pills. Those actually have sometimes the opposite effect. So you don't want that. But in her case, it's getting a a good idea of what's going on with her hormonally. I mean, we can tell that primarily from the symptoms. Remember, one of the myths is that we need to look at labs to determine where we are. That is not true, because these type of symptoms, the depression, the irritability, this feeling of overwhelm, that's a symptom of perimenopause. It can be a symptom. It can just be a symptom of you living your regular life too. But if you're feeling that, especially during this period, and you're feeling more of it, just know I don't need labs to tell me that that's what's happening with you. So in her case, 48 years old, the depression, the anxiety, the weight gain, all the things. I mean, like I said, she was a poster child. So we're going to look at progesterone. We're going to look at estrogen. Estrogen is, in this case, this is where her labs would be important to me, because she's having a few hot flashes. She doesn't feel like they're doing too much for her, but oftentimes women don't even perceive the hot flashes. And remember, we think of hot flashes like these episodes where we're just drowned in sweat or need to change the sheets. A hot flash can really just be a sense of heat. And so that is a symptom. And even though it's not necessarily bothersome, it is a symptom. And you may have all these other symptoms going on and not really even paying attention to the hot flash, but all these other things are happening. And you are saying, oh, I'm not in perimenopause. I'm not menopausal because I don't have the hot flashes. And it doesn't quite work that way. So in her case, looking at her estrogen levels, looking at her FSH, follicle stimulating hormone level, would be important to me, just so I can get some general idea of what's happening, and understanding that this is a snapshot. These labs are going to look one way today. They may very well look one way tomorrow, but at least I have an idea what they look like today. And I really encouraged her to consider really upping she was seeing a therapist, but honestly making that a top priority, and making herself a top priority, because again, in her case, I could honestly just see the sense of defeat in her eyes. And actually during that visit, she just started to tear up because she was trying to hold it together. Like so many women were trying to just hold it together and give the impression that everything is fine. Everything is fine. Everything is fine. But it's not fine. And if it's not fine, understand that, again, this is a period potentially for you where you have to sit down and think about what your growth strategy is going to look like. White knuckling it is not a strategy. So journaling, I think, would be great. It's a great way to find that awareness. It's a great way to just sit down and be with yourself and just write. And then meditation, which I know so many of you are going to say, I can't meditate. Here's the thing about meditation. Everybody can meditate. Understand first and foremost that there are different types of meditations. Maybe for you, it's a walking meditation or a guided meditation. But understand that you are going to be distracted while you meditate. And that's the whole point. The whole point is for you to recognize the distraction, to recognize the thoughts in your brain, to recognize what you're thinking and how those thoughts are just really the monkey on the wheel. And so if you imagine meditating like you are laying on a lovely grass with perfect weather and you're looking up at the clouds and you see clouds just floating by and you just see the clouds and you're like, oh, look at that one. Look at that one. Look at that one. It's the same thing with meditation. Because in meditation, we're not expecting our brains to go silent or blank. With meditation, we are observing our thoughts. We are measuring. Meditate comes from the word measure, to measure. And so we are measuring our thoughts and we are noticing them. So the fact that you have the thoughts doesn't mean that you're not meditating. It's the time that you take to stop and recognize that you are not your thoughts and your thoughts are not running the show. But for so many of us, the thoughts become everything. We really believe all the thoughts and we think that we need to act on the thoughts, but you are not the thoughts. So if you can take that time to just stop and observe what's going on here. For me, honestly, there's some days where I try to meditate and I'm like, whoa, you got a busy mind today, girl. This is not going to be necessarily what I would think would be the most gratifying meditation. But what it did help me be very aware of is that my mind is racing and I need to do everything in my power today to try to get present and to try to stay present. Because when we move into the past or the future, that's really all our thoughts can be, is in the past or the future. So observing, where are you? Are you in the past? Are you in the future? And then just bring yourself right back to today and what's happening just at this moment. Not all the expectations. And some of those expectations are real. Like if you don't pay this bill, then yeah, there will be consequences. But at this moment, we're not dealing with the consequence. We're just dealing with the anxiety around the decisions. So journaling, meditation. Number three, I would say, is a self-care routine. Now, we talk a lot about self-care, but I got to tell you, going into this phase, I just think self-care is the most important thing you can do. And that can look a variety of different ways. And after I reflected, especially on this past week, on kind of the struggles that I was having and the challenges that were coming up, I realized that I was not coping with them the way that I would have liked to have been coping with them. One day I just came home and sobbed. I just was like, literally, I just felt like this is too much. And by the next morning, I woke up and I was like, okay, I can do this. I can do this. But in the moment, I just felt like I just want to go somewhere and I just want to sell everything, go somewhere, and just not have any responsibilities. And yeah, here we are. But that said, self care is everything. And I realized that, earlier in the year, I had gotten really good. I was going to yoga consistently in the morning so that I can just really kind of train my mind to get present. I mean, it wasn't about the exercise, it was really more about the understanding that yoga as an act, the asanas, the postures of yoga, really are meant to help prepare you for your meditation. And by doing that, it just kind of forced me to get present and to have the discipline to know that I needed to be present, even if I wasn't present at the time. I just know that that's what I'm supposed to be. But that said, I wasn't doing my routines. I had stopped journaling. I wasn't doing my yoga consistently. I was eating trash. I was scrolling. I've been on Instagram more than I need to be. And I was like, okay, you got to roll all that back. You got to stop it all again. And then you got to reestablish a plan now. It's not summer anymore. We're going into the winter. So whatever kind of plan, whatever kind of schedule you need to get yourself back in order, let's do that, because that helped my sanity. And even though I didn't always love the discipline, I just felt like being able to take care of myself and knowing that I was doing all these efforts, I just felt like it made everything in life more manageable. And finally, the sleep. Like, you got to go to bed. And there's just nothing that substitutes for sleep. And it's really hard to manage life when you are working on 5-6 hours of sleep. So getting back to that routine, whatever that looks like, is important. So those would be the four things I would say in terms of strategies to help us get off of this struggle bus. And again, recognize that we got to do the work. This is the time, this is the season. There's really no there's no getting around the work. I tell people, if there's a way to get around things, I'm fairly certain I would have figured them out. But, your growth during this period isn't just going to happen. There really does need to be some intentionality about it. There needs to be an awareness. There needs to be intentionality, and there needs to be the work. And that work is whatever it is that helps you be more aware, that helps you be more present, and that gives you the opportunity to really reflect on where you have been and where you're trying to go. But more importantly, just where you are at this moment, and releasing all the other expectations of what other people think you should be doing, even what you might think you should be doing. It's the work, it's the time to reflect on, what did you come here to do? And what's keeping you from doing it? This is the season of change. This is the season of unwanted change. It can be a season of unwanted challenges, but it is also a season of unprecedented growth. And you can have that and you can do that with the intention. The third client I saw was a woman whose son had gone away to college. He came back after a year, and now he's actually living with his girlfriend because he basically is just being a defiant teenager and acting up right now. But she's also going through some relationship challenges. And she was just, feeling very, very frustrated because she had done so much to get him to this point, and he really is just kind of screwing up right now. He is forging his own path, so to speak. And so I could identify with her in this idea that we're trying to launch our youth, and some of our youth aren't launching. They are not thriving and launching the way that we kind of envisioned. They're making decisions that we don't agree with. And yeah, sometimes they're coming back home. And that's a challenge. It's frustrating. And I won't get into all the different ways that can go sideways. At least my own personal experience has been very humbling in the idea that as a parent, I felt like I've done all the things, tried to do all the things, of course, and recognizing at the end of the day that everyone has free will and they have a choice. And even though you may have presented, whether it's a friend, your partner, your child, you presented someone with all of the information they needed, all of the resources, all of the things, and they have chosen a different route. And that's okay. Recognize that you did your best. And although it may seem completely illogical to you why someone would choose an alternate path, just like it may seem completely illogical to you that someone might vote for a particular political candidate, it's not up to you. It's not up to us. Everyone gets to pick their path. And it is a challenging time when we are going through this ourselves, trying to figure out who we are, what we came here to do, all the things. And we're also trying to support other people, whether it's our kids, our partners, aging parents. It's hard. And you deserve to spend as much time as you need to take care of yourself. And you'll never hear me not say this over and over again, which is you cannot pour from an empty cup. So whatever it is required to fill your cup, and if you don't know, just sit down and ask yourself, what does that look like? Take the time, understand that the growth isn't happening spontaneously. You do have to put some work in. And the work, I do think it can be hard and it can be overwhelming sometimes. There's some questions that come up that you don't necessarily want to answer. You don't really want to know some of the answers, but that is where the work comes in, and that is where the growth happens, and that is where the needle gets moved. So get some help. Understand that the growth can, but doesn't always just happen. There is some work. Be intentional about that work and consider the 4 things I mentioned to help you, whether it's getting through this week or the holidays or next year, journaling, meditation, sticking to your self-care routine, and making sure you sleep. Consider those 4 things, and I will see you on the next one. Stay brilliant, stay beautiful, but most of all, ladies, stay juicy. I'll see you next time.